Welcome back into Red Corner, Blue Corner right here on Stadium. Jake Butt is joining me. I'm Joshua Perry, and we got to get to a tweet that came out here from Paul Feinbaum. Does some really good work covering the sport. There's 4 FBS teams that didn't take any transfers: Army, Navy, Air Force, which require a congressman to sign off, and then there's Clemson, little old Dabo over there.
You never want to be in that category with Army, Navy, and Air Force unless it's like measuring discipline
or like rushing offense.
Yeah, or average wake-up time to make your bed in the morning. Like, you don't want to do that.
Dude, so we probably don't have time to tell the stories. I did a production call with Navy, their coaches and their players, and it was the most interesting thing that I have ever been a part of. Those guys deserve a lot of credit for the discipline that they have.
Now you're leaving us on a cliffhanger.
I know.
So I'm going to ask you about this
We'll
at
bring
another
it back
time.
at some point.
Right.
Okay, so we got to talk about this, right? It's the day and age of the portal. It's the day and age of name, image, and likeness. Everybody is using the portal. Literally everybody, save for 4 teams, are in the portal here. Is it coaching malpractice to not involve yourself in the transfer market?
Yes, it is. It is. You have to at least be having this conversation. You have to be doing the work to scout and explore. And it doesn't necessarily mean your roster needs to look like Colorado, where it's all transfers. But you need to be getting, and it doesn't even need to be impact guys today. You could be getting a young guy that you think that you liked in recruiting that could develop down the stretch. Now, here's the issue. Well, Clemson, you didn't add anybody. So you better win all your games this year.
Right.
You better make a serious run.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, people are going to be saying, why are we paying you the amount we're paying you?
Yep.
And you're not going to upgrade. You're telling me there's not one guy in the portal that you could have added even at a minimum for depth on your roster? I think that's complete malpractice.
Yeah, and Dabo had comments, obviously, about, the crazy stat there about being one of 4 teams that didn't take a transfer. Said, well, it wasn't necessarily like an intentional thing. There were a couple of guys we looked at. They got to love you, too. That's the other part. And honestly, every player is technically a transfer. We just signed a whole class of guys transferring from high school. So we like our guys. We like our starters. Okay, first off, the whole everybody's a transfer. We signed a whole class of guys transferring from high school. Shut up. That is so dumb.
Weak.
It is crazy. Like, don't talk to us like we're idiots, okay? Like, just say that there were no guys in there. The first part was fine. You didn't have to do the second part. And I get that you like your guys. You should say that part, but the whole they transferred from high school is crazy. I'm with Jake, though, right? And when you start to dig into the numbers of how this works, and I'll just go through them a couple. So last 5 years, 2019 to 2024 here, he's brought in 2 players, Hunter Johnson at quarterback and Paul Tyson, both quarterbacks. Hunter Johnson committed and enrolled at Clemson, then went to Northwestern, went back to Clemson. I can hardly even count that as a transfer. They recruited that guy out of high school. They've lost 54 players, right? And you bring in 2. These numbers are crazy. And look at the last 3 years, 11, 12, 12. So my whole point is, I think you do need to supplement, because the portal is a two-way street. The door opens and the door closes, right? And so I think for the idea that you would lose 12 players, to your point, do you have to bring in 12 starters? No. But should you bring in maybe a veteran depth piece? Yes. Maybe you bring in a young developmental piece? Yes. And if there is a starter, you can bring that guy in there too. But the idea that you're just going to let guys walk out the door and say we don't need to bring any other guys in is crazy. And I love what you said. And it's not even, you better win all of the games for me. You better not have one hole on that roster. There better be 0 deficiencies. Every position group has to be best in America conversation, or you're not doing your program any justice.
Can we pull that chart back up of guys leaving the program? I just want to make a point real quick, because when you're talking about guys like okay, these are guys that all left the program. But those are guys that you invest. Those are different than high school players, because they've spent time in a college weight room with a college diet, learning a college playbook, learning how to play college football. So you've invested resources to develop these guys now for someone else. And you're taking guys that have developed by their high school programs. So it's a high school recruit and a transfer portal guy are not the same. To make up some of that ground, you have to go to the portal to get some college experience on your roster. And another thing, I just saw this quote about Dabo Swinney. He said, we looked at the guys in the portal and they weren't good enough to play for us. How are they good enough to play for everybody else but you?
That one's the one that really bothers me because, first off, like, it's untrue, right? But, like, it almost feels like he's trying to make a broad stroke statement about the type of guy that ends up in the portal, right? Because when I hear not good enough to play for us, I'm thinking about on field mainly, which once again, I'm sure you could have either found an upgrade or somebody who would have ended up being in the rotation that's better than somebody on your roster. Not good enough to play for us also feels like Dabo has a specific type of person that he wants to bring in, and that's why he only brings in the high school guys. And he's saying that players that go in the portal are not that type of character, identity, whatever it may be, on top of the player that they are. And that's what really pisses me off about this.
How it feels like a little kid that like is caught in like a lie, and it's like rather than just own up to it, you know, they just double down, where it's like he's been against this, he's made a bunch of comments, and meanwhile, I just looked it up to make sure I'm correct, $11.5 million a year.
And he's the most stubborn coach in college football.
What? At this point, I think if I was him, I'd just get up and say, I was wrong. We have not been good enough. I have not been good enough.
He's never wrong.
I need to look because the game has changed since I last had success here. I need to adjust. And yet all the comments coming out are him doubling down on his past comments, which led to losses. And we talk about Clemson as a program. There's not every program in college football has the potential to be a playoff contender and a national title contender. Clemson has proven to have that potential, but not if you don't adjust with the games in the rest of the programs. It's ignorance to me.
Well, I'll say this last thing, and then we'll move on to the next topic here. Nick Saban, best that ever did it, went to the transfer portal. We've seen Kirby recently won a national title, transfer portal. Jim Harbaugh, and as hard as it is to get kids into Michigan with the academic overlays, he looks at the portal, he identified guys. Sharon Moore is going to do the same thing, won a championship doing it that way. So not every one of the formulas was the same for any of those three coaches, but they knew that in order to be successful and to have a roster that could last you into January to contend